Poppy is the enigma at the heart of Poppy Playtime. From the very first chapter, she is positioned as something different from the rest of Playtime Co.'s monstrous creations. Huggy Wuggy, Doughy, Mommy Longlegs, and Catnap are all terrifying in their own ways, but Poppy isn't a rampaging beast. She's the only one who is relatively normal, just a doll. She doesn't chase you through vents or try to eat you. Instead, she's observant. She watches with her two human eyes, and she speaks very carefully. She presents herself as an innocent ally, but something about her never quite feels right. It's like when a stranger knocks on your door and they seem friendly, but you can't help but feel this gut-wrenching twisting in your stomach like something is just off. But they speak softly enough and you kind of just let them in for a cup of coffee in your kitchen. Now, Poppy was marketed as the first truly intelligent doll, but what does that really mean? The tagline makes it seem like she was just an advanced AI, a toy that could hold a conversation, but as we discover more about Playtime Co.'s experiments, it becomes clear that Poppy is something else entirely, something more human, something alive. The other toys were people before they became monsters, so what about her? What's her backstory, and why does she do the things that she does throughout the series? And that is why we do psychoanalysis on my channel. By using real-world psychology, we can uncover the deeper reasons behind characters and their motivations in order to better understand them. Many times we can relate them to ourselves and even become a part of history as we have an academic conversation about the games and the characters that inhabit the worlds. If you like the content, hit the like. Dislike button for those of you who don't. All engagement helps. And welcome to the psychology of
Poppy.
From the moment that she's freed in Chapter 1, Poppy's behavior is erratic. At first, she seems grateful and eager to help, as if she's been waiting for somebody to save her, but as the game progresses, throughout the chapters, her demeanor shifts. She starts to withhold information, make decisions without consulting others, and act in ways that are increasingly difficult to trust. This raises the question, does Poppy actually care about anybody but herself? Her actions throughout the game create a contradiction. You see, she positions herself as a friend, but she's also rather manipulative, constantly deciding what we should and shouldn't know. As the Doctor in Chapter 4 would state, Poppy gives us just enough to keep us moving forward, but never the full truth. It's a pattern we see over and over again, and by the very end, it's impossible to ignore. Is she a victim? Just another experiment struggling to survive? Or is she something more dangerous, something playing a much longer game than anyone realizes? One of the biggest theories, at least to me in Poppy Playtime, is that Poppy isn't just another experiment, she's Elliot Ludwig's daughter. And if that is true, it changes everything about how we should view her, and it also gives birth to new ideas as to the reasons behind her actions. Actually, I'm popping in from the future due to a recent development. Tom Potter 8703 in my Story Explained video for Poppy Playtime had informed me that there was actually a tape that you could easily miss during the Doughy chase sequence. But on that tape, it shows Poppy's confession for the Hour of Joy, implying she helped plan it, but also that she is indeed Elliot Ludwig's daughter. Throughout the game, we learned that Playtime Co. wasn't just manufacturing living toys for fun. There was something deeper going on. Experiments, disappearances, people dying, being turned into toys, but why? What was Ludwig's true goal? In his office, we would find a tape that explains,
Ludwig spent countless hours in the factory, working overtime relentlessly in an attempt to continuously innovate and surprise. In the 1960s, an unfortunate family death had pushed Ludwig down to his lowest. But with so much ambition, he rose back up and continued to fulfill his vision for the Playtime Co. toy factory. Ludwig could never be content leaving a project unfinished. But just how did one man come to create such an astounding empire? How did he manage to stay determined even after suffering such a tragic loss?
Now, because his wife divorced him, we know that she wasn't the one who died. I love my wife, but who else could it have been? Who else is a dearly beloved that could have a world-breaking impact on Ludwig? Perhaps a child, a daughter even. But then there is the Poppy doll itself. Unlike the other toys in the commercials, she is the only one that was ever advertised as human-like. The commercial that introduces her in the very beginning doesn't just present her as a toy, it pushes this idea that she is real, just like you. And that alone makes her separate from the other Playtime co-creations. But one of the biggest clues is the prototype's final words to her. In Chapter 4, after Poppy defies him, he doesn't just treat her like another experiment gone rogue, he talks to her like a disappointed parent. He tells her, "You don't need to pretend to be strong anymore, it's time to come home." Now it's not just what he says, but how he says it.
I admit, though, I'm disappointed.
After all that time in your case, I'd hoped you'd see things
Differently. Don't you understand?
It's always been about you.
And we hobby what we are.
Prototype. Please.
It's time to come home.
Poppy.
It's time to come home.
It's personal. Not like how he talks about the other toys, and he doesn't try to kill her or even assimilate her like the rest, he just wants her back home. If the prototype is Ludwig himself, then this could be a father talking to his daughter, one who has lost her way. Poppy may be the prototype's daughter, Ludwig's daughter. Elliot couldn't accept her death, so he turned her into a doll, eliminating her human form just to keep her essence alive. Does this confirm anything? No, but if it's true, then Poppy isn't just another victim, she would be the reason it all started. How far would Ludwig go back to bring his daughter? How far would you go for love? I love my wife. I would go far. But you see, Poppy doesn't need claws, teeth, or brute strength to be dangerous.
Listen, mate, you don't want to fight me, all right? If we go, I will break you.
What are you doing?
He's doing his Wolverine thing.
Yeah.
Much like Mikola from Elden Ring, her power lies in words. You see, unlike Huggy Wuggy or Doughy, who physically overpower their victims, Poppy's greatest weapon is her ability to manipulate and control. And she is experienced at this. She carefully shapes reality around her, nudging people into choices that ultimately serve her own survival. That is, until the very end, where the veil begins to drop and she sort of does have to beg and insist people to do what she says, but still, she gets what she wants. Poppy's greatest weapon isn't brute force, it's control. She carefully crafts an image of innocence, making the player feel responsible for her, but time and time again, her actions reveal a different truth. She derails the train, stranding us deeper in the factory. She abandons Kissy Missy when danger looms, despite their apparent bond. The toys at Safe Haven resent her, convinced that she tried to escape without them. She pushes Doughy to fight the prototype despite his fear, and was also willing to blow up Playtime Co. without warning anybody. But that is what makes her so dangerous. Poppy doesn't manipulate through deception, she manipulates through carefully controlled truth, through controlled flow of information. Let's take a look at her behavior in Chapter 2. When we meet her, she seems startled but also eager to downplay any threat that she might pose. Almost immediately, she frames the situation to make us feel like we should trust her. She insists that we work together, casually dangling the promise that she knows the way out the train, the answers, everything we need. But then, before we can even question it, she's taken away, pulled away by Mommy Longlegs. That moment does serve a purpose. Whether intentional or not, it plants a powerful seed in the player's mind. Poppy needs our help. The moment she gets her voice back after defeating Mommy, she stops answering questions directly. Instead of giving us what we need, she begins guiding us towards what she wants. And this is actually a tactic seen in real-world psychological manipulation. The selective use of knowledge to create dependency. The less somebody knows, the more they rely on those who do have the answers. Just ask Americans. This is where gaslighting comes into play. The term, originally from the 1938 play Gaslight, describes a form of psychological manipulation where the victim is led to doubt their own perceptions and reality. Poppy doesn't deny facts outright. Just like Play-Doh, she remolds them, she reframes them, choosing her words carefully to manipulate situations in her favor. And by chapter 4, we see her goal is to kill the prototype and blow up Playtime Co., with her reasoning being that it is for the greater good, to stop Playtime from perpetuating evil. But something tells me that Poppy is still not showing us the whole picture, and again, she is really good at making us feel like we are responsible for making sure we help. She says things like, "We have proven ourselves that we are capable enough to put an end to everything." It doesn't help that we discover we are actually an ex-employee of Playtime Co., but this is still just a classic example of justification-based manipulation, where a person shifts blame onto the victim, making their actions seem inevitable. Poppy does this in a few ways. However, what makes Poppy's manipulation so unsettling is that she never raises her voice. She simply creates circumstances where the only seemingly logical path forward is the one that she wants, the one that she crafts. But one important distinction I'd like to point out here is that Poppy is not power hungry. She is survival focused. Her decisions are not driven by dominance or control for its own sake, but rather a deeply ingrained need to endure. She sets herself up as the most important person in the room, in the story, because in her mind, she has to be. To survive in a world filled with monstrous entities, she can't afford to just be another victim, and that's a very human aspect. Her self-preservation instincts justify her sacrifices. She prioritizes her own well-being above all else. She adapts to the threats around her, shifting her demeanor and tactics as needed. If that means appearing innocent and helpless, she will do so. If it means controlling the information, subtly coercing others into following her lead, she's not going to stop and think about it. Even in one scene where the doctor gives us a choice to save the toy or kill the toy, he says that Poppy wouldn't hesitate to do the killing.
Survival necessitates choices. Just the slightest pull, Poppy would do it.
For Poppy, in her mind, she's not manipulating, she's simply doing what is necessary to stay alive, and Poppy's actions can be explained through terror management theory, or TMT, which describes how awareness of death, how human awareness of death, shapes human behavior. Faced with her own unnatural existence, Poppy exhibits this defense mechanism, ensuring her survival at any cost. Her manipulative tendencies aren't about power, they stem from a deep fear of non-existence. To her, secrecy and deception aren't unethical, they're necessary to endure. And that is a big difference between somebody who is a master manipulator like Mikla from Elden Ring versus a master manipulator such as Poppy. In the game, we see this in her calculated deception. She presents herself as fragile and innocent to gain the player's trust, ensuring they protect her. She purposely doesn't tell us critical information, subtly forcing us into dependency. The moment her survival is at risk, such as when the prototype threatens her in Chapter 4, she abandons the player and Kissy without hesitation. These behaviors align perfectly with TMT, because individuals facing existential threats often engage in extreme rationalization and self-preservation, even if it means manipulating others or betraying moral principles. And we see this in the real world quite often. When push comes to shove, when it's every dog for themselves, people will trample on each other and fight and beat other people down if it means getting toilet paper. Or more recently, eggs if you're in the United States of America. Poppy carefully crafts the image of a hero, even when abandoning others. She never outright calls herself a savior, but her words and actions shape that perception. This is moral disengagement, Albert Bandura's theory on how people justify harmful actions by detaching themselves from their moral standards. Poppy convinces herself and us that survival justifies every betrayal. Poppy engages in at least 3 mechanisms, key mechanisms of moral disengagement. We have moral justification, where basically she just does whatever she wants and she says that it's okay because she's serving a higher cause, stopping the prototype. You have displacement of responsibility, where Poppy avoids accountability by shifting responsibility onto the player. For example, in Chapter 4, she tells us,
"Let me help you save everyone. We've all seen you, how capable you are. You killed Huggy. You killed Mommy. You freed me. You are perfect for this."
making it feel like it's our job to take the risk. And after 4 chapters of doing everything that she asked, how does she repay us? By turning the blame on us the moment Safe Haven is in ruins and she's about to get caught.
You! What did you do? Why did you kill Dowie? Do you even understand what happened? The prototype, Did you even plant the explosives?
Classic Poppy. And then you have euphemistic labeling, where Poppy sanitizes her betrayals with vague, softened language to make light of the situation. For example, rather than admitting that she tricked us on the train, I almost said plane there, she dismisses it with, "There are bigger things at play," dodging accountability entirely. From the very beginning, something about Poppy just felt unsettlingly off, and now, after everything we've seen, we understand why. She isn't a monster in the traditional sense, but in some ways, dude, she's far more dangerous, not through strength, but through control. To me, that's a little bit scarier, because you don't really understand or know what's going on. At least if you have a monster chasing you, you know what to expect. But with Poppy, it takes a little bit of time to start realizing and seeing her true colors. Poppy is kind of villainous. Poppy doesn't just survive, she ensures she's the only one left standing, and she is able to look scared while doing it. The crazy, insane thing is that Poppy is the type to bring down the entire ship with everybody on it. I mean, just look at all the bodies that lie in Poppy's wake. You know, for a doll, she was definitely the one pulling strings. Click the video on screen to enjoy my full story explained of all the chapters in Poppy Playtime, or watch my psychoanalysis on Elden Ring's Miquella, another master manipulator.